So thank you for joining the update call on the SAP Cloud SDK for the SAP Community. My name is Lucia Subadin. I will be hosting this call. Please note that this session is being recorded, and if you have any questions, please feel free to enter them in the Q&A panel, and we will respond them at the end of the session. I'm here with Ekaterina Kruse. She's from the SAP Cloud SDK product management team. So Ekaterina, if you're ready, take it away.
Thanks, Lucia. Thanks, and also welcome from my side to this call. So my name is Ekaterina Kruse. I'm from SAP Cloud SDK development and product management team, looking for partner management in particular. So working with our SAP community on various technical topics, covering development with the SDK in SAP Cloud Platform. And so today is the first instance of the call where we will cover various updates on the SDK that we have actually bi-weekly, and we will discuss also other topics related to SAP extensibility, to SAP Cloud Platform based applications, etc. So the topics that are related to SAP Cloud SDK in general. So also discussing how various tools that SAP provides you with to build applications relate to each other. So I'm really looking forward to do this session today, and also our team is very looking forward to your participation in those calls, because I think it's very useful information that you can get from this. So if you are SAP partners or you are part of the partner community, might be that you have followed the sessions that we conducted since December 2018, where we have also given update on the SDK, formerly known SAP S/4HANA Cloud SDK. And this call series is basically continuation of the previous calls that we had, but also is slightly different format. So we have broadened the community. So it's not only available for partners, but everybody can basically register and listen to this call later on YouTube. But also we will cover broader topics. So not only covering S/4HANA extensibility as before, but extend the topic set, also covering other LOB extensibility, and as I mentioned, also SAP Cloud Platform-based applications in general. So we will conduct this call series on a monthly basis, and as I said, this is the first instance in this particular format, and every month we plan to give you updates on the SDK itself. As we have bi-weekly releases of the SDK, we will cover 2 last releases that we had in the SDK. And also, in addition to these updates, we will give you an overview on some particular topics. So there will be some demos, there will be some presentations, etc. on a selected topic. And those topics that we plan to cover in the future calls, that they will be published in a SAP community call list that you probably also know. So that's a little bit of the background for this particular call series and for this particular call. And I would like to kick off this session or the series today. After that, every first Tuesday of the month, my colleagues will also provide you corresponding information in those calls. So let's move forward to the content of the call today. And today I would like to start this with the following topics. First of all, for those who haven't worked with the SDK yet and does not know what is this and how to use it, in which cases to use it, I have prepared a very quick overview of the SDK itself, and just to bring everybody on the same page, to explain what the tool is and how to use it and why do you probably want to use it. And starting from this point, we will cover the what's new topic. So as I mentioned, this is basically the continuation of partner update calls. So the last call we had with partners was in May, and therefore I have decided to cover the latest releases since May in the SDK and cover the most important points and extensions that we had in the software development kit since May. And this is what I will be talking about in the first part of the session. After that, we will discuss what changes did we have together with the renaming of the S/4HANA Cloud SDK into SAP Cloud SDK. And in particular, we will take a closer look at some features of the SDK that probably not everybody know about. So there are some features that are well known, like Java client, JavaScript client, for connectivity with S/4HANA system, but there are actually other features such as platform abstractions and client generator that can be used also for any cloud native application that you build. And I would like to again highlight those features here in this presentation. And we will finish with Q&A, so feel free, as Lucia has mentioned, feel free to post your questions already in the Q&A if you have any. If you don't have questions, it's also okay. We can discuss your points also offline. This is totally fine. So let's move forward with the first part of the session, introduction of the SDK and what's new since May. Just as a reminder, if you haven't heard about this tool, SAP Cloud SDK, a software development kit, is the set of development tools, basically the set of libraries, Java, and currently also JavaScript and TypeScript, that help you to build applications running in SAP Cloud Platform and communicating with SAP systems such as S/4HANA, which was our first LOB or the first system we supported, and now also other LOB systems such as SAP SuccessFactors, Business by Design, Cloud for Customer, and in the future more will come. So this is the set of libraries, meaning that you don't need to write the same boilerplate code again and again when you write your application running in SAP, connecting to the systems. I can just reuse this set of libraries to make your code a bit shorter, to make it more secure, to make it more effective. It's important to note that it's not only the libraries that we provide. So that slide that you see here right now is highlighting the project, like typical project phases that we have in the cloud development in SAP, and also our partners have them. So, and you can see that in each phase, on each stage of the project, there are some tools and there are some deliverables that we provide that can help to, first of all, get to know, to onboard, to learn something, how to build cloud native applications, for instance, on the onboarding phase. So we have a set of tutorials and deep dives available via SAP Community. So just easily, I have provided the link on the last slide, but you can also easily Google those tutorials, but just mentioning SAP Cloud SDK in search and you will find them easily. There is also a book that you see here on the screen explaining those topics that we have in tutorials in more details with some practical examples. And also OpenSAP course, which is also based on the materials of the book, but also giving you lectures and also some practical exercises that you can go through, and this is based on Java. So in addition to onboarding, there are some deliverables for conception and design phase. We will see them also in the demo later, but just wanted to highlight such tools like project templates. So if you start your project development from scratch, there is a skeleton that you can use that we provide with the SDK, so you don't need to build the full structure of the application that runs in SAP and SAP Cloud Platform from zero. You can start with this project template right here, and it's true for the local development, but also there are some templates that you can use in WebID that already integrate the SDK dependencies. So you can use it out of the box. We also will talk today about continuous delivery toolkit when talking about various tools that you can use for any cloud native development. And here you can see this tool already on the conception design phase, but also on the testing release phase and on the deployment phase, because this tool is basically a kind of life cycle management tool for your application. So that tool that you can easily install using the artifacts provided in the SDK. You can install it on the cloud or on your premise and use it not only on the conception design phase and development phase, but also importantly on the deployment phase, because it tests your application end to end and checking the quality as deploys is this application in Cloud Platform. The development phase I have already covered, so those libraries that we will discuss in a second, that is kind of the core of the SDK of the software development kit. And also talking about testing and release, this continuous delivery pipeline provides some quality checks that we pre-configure for you for those programming languages that are supported, like Java and JavaScript. So you can see that the SDK, it's, well, this is the technical tool that the programmers and developers can use, but it also helps on various project phases and also for project managers, for product managers, to get to know the tooling and the concepts before starting and planning the development of the project. Well, now talking about the value and why you would use the SDK, we often use this slide to explain it, and then this particular slide explains one of the features that we have in the software development kit and why we use it, because it's just very easy to show how to, or why you would use those libraries in the development. But it's important to note it's not the only one module that we have, and we will later see others as well. But I will use exactly this particular example again to highlight the feature of the SDK that helps to build cloud applications and connect to S/4HANA with ease. So here on the left-hand side, you can see the various lines of code that you have to write in Java. Then if you want to build the application, Java application that is running in SAP Cloud Platform, and that is sending the queries to an OData service of SAP S/4HANA. And in this case, it's Business Partner OData Service, then getting the response back and deserializing this response. So you can see there is a set of steps that the developer needs to execute to go through here, which is standard steps like retrieving the URL of the system, authenticating and implementing this authentication against the system as it is configured in the destination service of SAP Cloud Platform, and then building the request, corresponding OData request, connecting to the system and handling the response. So, and every time when we write a query to any service of S/4HANA, the steps are quite similar. So there is the pattern. There are patterns that we repeat every time here in the development, and also while building our applications at SAP and Cloud Platform, we have noticed these patterns and decided to simplify this development by building the software development kit that makes it as simple as this. So to write the same logic that we have on the left-hand side, you can just use much less lines of code and make this code much more readable and secure. So what is the tool? Like, what is the concept here behind this? So if you take a close look on the right-hand side of this slide, you can notice the special variable service here, which is actually of type business partner service, that is part of the Java client, or so-called virtual data model for the corresponding API, in this case business partner API, that we generate and pack into the SDK and pre-deliver this with the SDK modules. And so each whitelisted, so officially available S/4HANA Cloud API has this particular type that you can use to build Java native fluent queries like this. So getting, for instance, all business partners, or also you can do create business partner or update business partner, which will cause calling of corresponding HTTP methods. And then again, using generated entities like business partners, select the fields that you want to read, and also do whatever operations is allowed on the data. So you don't, again, need to compile those select filter as strings here, which sound probably quite dangerous, as you can define or can identify issue on the compile time, but you just build it in Java native way. And so this is this pre-generated client for whitelisted APIs. And I would like to show you again live here how this looks like in the development. So just imagine I'm a software developer who would like to build such kind of application. It's a very simple business partner address manager application. And if you were attending previous sessions, you know this one. So I want to read business partners here on the left-hand side, selecting the list of business partners, and I want to show the details about business partners here on the right-hand side. And so how can I do this? Let's say in Java. So I have already generated the project structure in my IDE. I have loaded this project. And here I have used this software development kit archetype or template to generate the structure. And now I have added some additional artifacts here that help me to basically build this application. And one of them is this business partner servlet that helps to answer get queries on business partners. So when I want to get all business partners, I'm delegating the logic to this particular class, get business partner command, or get all business partner command. This is there. And now we can see that currently the logic that has to return the list of partners, business partners from S4, it's not implemented yet. So we just return the empty list here. Now let's try to use this client virtual data model of the SDK to return the list of business partners and not just return the empty list. So first of all, I would like to pay your attention to this business partner service class and to the Java doc that we have here. It's also generated Java doc for this whitelisted API. And you can see that it is referencing the API Business Hub. So if I select API Business Hub, it's even leading me to the particular whitelisted API here. Now I can use this variable service to do whatever I want. And so all the entities and operations on those entities can be easily available here directly in my IDE. You can also use, so I'm using this local development environment here. You can also use Web IDE the same manner, choosing the right project template. And so let's say select, which is select some fields. And again, here note that this business partner entity that I used to select fields, these entities are also pre-generated in the and added into the SDK. Last name. And also this is a type safe to talk, or a type safe way to talk to the API. So if, for instance, I have some dates here, etc., they will be automatically deserialized into the right Java object here. So I can also say filter, let's do filtering on category and filter by persons. So I want just to retrieve persons. Then I just say execute. And this execute method does the magic that we had on the slide on the left-hand side. All I need to do is just to say ERP config context with the corresponding name of this config context, which I can on the other side configure in SAP Cloud Platform. And so I can configure the URL, I can configure the user name, if it is basic authentication, I can configure certificates if it is principal propagation. And you as a developer here in the source code, you even don't need to know what kind of authentication type is behind the query here, because the SDK libraries will take care of the right authentication type here when you just provide the name of the configuration. So let me just quickly build this, and while it's building, we can take a look at the dependencies, and you can see here there is a module S4HANA All. This is exactly the module that is added to my dependencies, which contain this whitelisted client. So client for the whitelisted APIs. Let me push the new version of the application now to the SAP Cloud Platform, to which I'm already logged in here in the IDE. And while it is pushing this, I want to again show you here. I have used the configuration or the endpoint name S4HANA. And here, just again, to give you an overview, you can see that this is exactly the system to which the queries will be sent. So I can also use several destination configuration here in the SAP Cloud Platform, and just switching between names, leaving the query the same. I can achieve that the query will be sent to different system with different authentication type, and even I can choose whether that's on-premise or cloud system without changing the code much. So by this means, we basically separate here the configuration from the development or from coding, and achieve this clean code. Now we can have seen that the application is now uploaded, and we can see the list of business partners. This is exactly the query that I have just built quickly in Java, and this is how it feels when you build this Java code and use those libraries in your Java code, instead of doing more complicated and more error-prone steps like retrieving all this configuration and building the query from scratch. You can just use this virtual data model to build such an easy query as this, but this is again works with other APIs available there, like product APIs, sales orders, whatever is available there on API Hub, that's accessible with the same way as I have just shown here. Another point to mention, so when we talk about then what's new, so to say, what are the latest news that we had in the SDK? If you follow our updates, you may have heard that we have recently released the general availability version of the JavaScript TypeScript SDK. So now you can do the same as I have just shown in Java, also in JavaScript. And we also provide this virtual data model or JavaScript client for whitelisted APIs in JavaScript. And there is a set of tutorials which is extending constantly, and there is also a type doc documentation that you can take a look at as provided here in the link. So encourage you to take a look at this if you prefer JavaScript programming language. The next update, or the next major update that we had recently, that was announced at Sapphire. So you maybe know that the previous name of the software development kit was the S4HANA Cloud SDK. And the reason being is that we have mainly or initially supported only those APIs of S4HANA Cloud. And this business partner API that I have just shown in the demo is one of them. It's just one example. But then with the time, we have developed so-called client generator or virtual data model generator, which is also now a part of the SDK. And by this means, and also by providing some other modules in the SDK, we achieve the possibility of using the SDK while communicating with other systems, not only S4HANA, not only S4HANA Cloud, not only S4HANA on-premise, but also other LOB systems. So therefore, the renaming happened. So it's a really development-driven renaming that we had. And the SDK can now be used with different systems. So when you build application, building side-by-side extension for those applications, you can also leverage and profit from those libraries in a very similar way as I have shown for S/4HANA. But you can generate your own client. In the future, we will also include some already pre-generated clients for some of those systems. And so you can also, even with more ease, extend those systems. So the systems that you see on the slide here, they are in plan for the support. There are some systems with which we already have evaluated the SDK, also in our internal projects. So apart from S/4HANA Cloud and on-premise, we also already support C4C, or Cloud for Customer, as part of the C4HANA suite. We also support SuccessFactors, and if you are interested, we have also recently published a blog post that is showing how to extend SuccessFactors in the side-by-side mode. We also support by design, and there is also a set of blog posts that is covering this particular topic in details. Also would like to show this very high-level big picture of how SDK relates to different other offerings that SAP provides. And there were also some additional announcements at TechEd, for instance, with regard to SAP Cloud Platform Extension Factory. And I would like to highlight that with the SDK, we support not only Cloud Foundry and Neo, but now also with the release of this extension factory, also the extension factory way to extend the solutions. And then, as I have mentioned on the previous slides, with the help of those libraries, you can communicate with the APIs of various SAP solutions. And important to note, on-premise and cloud. Another important point here to note on this slide, that you can use the SDK in combination with SAP application programming model, which is basically the tooling to build your own local data model for SAP HANA, for instance, in SAP Cloud Platform. But if you want to communicate with external systems, then you can integrate those systems via the SDK into your application programming model application. But it's also important to note that you are not forced to use application programming model when working with the SDK, as you basically can use any framework of choice that is supported for this programming language. So when we talk about Java, for instance, it can be Spring Boot, it can be Java EE, and it can be also SAP application programming model. For the delivery and lifecycle management of the application builds with these tools, we provide this continuous delivery toolkit that I have mentioned in the previous slides. So this call series, as I have mentioned before, will be covering will be mainly focused on the SDK, because we are the team conducting these sessions from SAP Cloud SDK product management team. But it's important to note that we will always on this calls invite speakers from various tools that we integrate with, and in order to give you a big picture of how those tools relate to each other, because it's very important to understand basically when to use what. Now, those two updates that I have given in the previous slide to the SDK, so release of the JavaScript TypeScript SDK and the renaming of the SDK into SAP Cloud SDK, those are major changes. But since May, we have done 4 releases, and as we have bi-weekly releases. And just some more information on this slide of what additionally have happened, particularly if you are interested in the SDK. So if you are using SDK in your projects, maybe this details will be interesting for you. So first of all, what happened in May? So we had this announcement regarding the renaming of the SDK. We have 2 releases in May, 9th of May and 23rd of May. And so so as I mentioned, we have various versions now. So for Java, we have released version 2.16.0 and 2.17.0 in May. And in the first version, we have announced support of SAP Cloud Platform Extension Factory, which is basically cloud native framework And the main benefit of it, it allows to connect S/4HANA Cloud system to your SAP Cloud Platform account just with few simple steps. And now with the SDK, you can simplify the communication with connected systems with Extension Factory from your source code. So it's kind of an additional help tool for you on top of the Extension Factory for your application to connect to S4 systems. So we have released some blog posts that are describing how those tools play together, but it definitely makes sense to introduce this topic also in one of the update calls that we will plan in the future months, covering this topic in particular, especially if you're interested in both Extension Factory and the SDK. Then the next update is the migration of OData VDM that I have just shown in the demo to the new S/4HANA Cloud APIs release 1905. And another update is support of the put request in VDM. So previously we were supporting patch. Now you have a special method called replace an entity on your Fluent helpers that allows to do also put methods of HTTP. So this is from the version 2.17.0. For the JavaScript updates in May, so one major thing that we have done, so JavaScript was released a little bit later than Java, and therefore the feature richness is growing at the moment. So we have much more at the moment in Java than in JavaScript, but JavaScript version is growing very fast. And we are happy to announce that in one of those versions, we have introduced also support for S/4HANA on-premise connectivity. So now you can also connect to S/4HANA on-premise, not only S/4HANA Cloud, with the TypeScript or JavaScript SDK. The same as for Java, we have migrated the S/4HANA Cloud VDM to 1905 due to the S/4HANA Cloud release, and also introduced the custom support or custom fields for S/4HANA Cloud, which are already there for Java, of course, and for JavaScript, this feature was also introduced. So we have a set of methods to get custom field, to set custom field, to get all custom fields in the given entity, and also check if the entity has corresponding custom field with a name. Also for continuous delivery toolkits, we have some additional versions, and with those versions we support also cloud application programming model applications, and also there are extensions for features for JavaScript projects. So we have introduced code coverage for JavaScript projects, and so pipeline for JavaScript projects will now fail in case the test coverage, like unit test integration test coverage, is below 65% by default. In June, we also had 2 releases that I would like to highlight, and there are some major updates here. So for the Java versions, or in this 2.18.0, 2.18.1, we have updated the message VDM. So you may have heard, if you will participate in the partner calls so for the SDK, we have introduced this topic in one of the calls in particular. So we have message VDM, so not only the API VDM, and the message VDM was also migrated to 1905 version in Java. In JavaScript, we have 2 versions, and there are actually even more updates this month. So one of the expected updates that we have announced this time is the release of the OData client generator or VDM generator, also for JavaScript. So for Java, it was around already for some time. Now we have it available also for JavaScript and TypeScript. So basically, what does this mean? That means that you can create your own custom OData service in S/4HANA Cloud on-premise and connect to this custom OData service from or using this JavaScript SDK. As I have shown just for Java for Business Partner, the same you can do with JavaScript for your custom service. And also, it's important to note that by means of this generator, we also support other LOB systems that support OData protocol, such as SuccessFactors. We also have published a new tutorial series on the JavaScript SDK, so which may be particularly interesting for you if you're interested in JavaScript version. There is also a new version of the continuous delivery toolkit that you can get to know again in this release blog post. I really highly recommend to take a look at the release blog posts, which are available also via our release notes, as those blog posts describe those features that I have mentioned here in more details. So if one particular feature is interesting for you here in the call, I also recommend to take a look at the release blog post. Those give you examples of how to use those features, but also how to migrate to the newer version of the SDK. Good, so that's it regarding the first part. So we have just learned about what's the SDK, what is the SDK, for those who haven't had experience with the tool. And also I have just provided some major updates since May regarding this tool. And again, just to highlight, we have bi-weekly release strategy in all of our SDK editions for Java, for JavaScript, and also continuous delivery toolkit. So in the next call in August, we will again introduce 2 releases that we plan till then. And now let's move forward to the next topic. So I have already highlighted the change of the name of the S/4HANA Cloud SDK to SAP Cloud SDK. And now I would like to show you some features of the SDK that can be used for any cloud native application. So not only for the S4 extensibility, not only for S/4HANA side-by-side extension, and which actually show why we have chosen this particular name. So what are the benefits of the SDK? I have shown in the demo the connectivity to S/4HANA. In particular, I have shown how to connect to S/4HANA API. And also in the SDK, since one of the last versions, we support connectivity to S/4HANA events. So how to easily consume events coming from S/4HANA. But apart from the S/4HANA connectivity, there are some other features in the SDK that can be used for any application in SAP, even if it is a standalone application. So first of all, the set of features that help you to boost the development efficiency in SAP Cloud Platform. So what does it mean? So if you take a look at the SAP Cloud Platform cockpit here, we will notice there is a set of services. Let me just go to the service marketplace. There is a set of services that we can potentially integrate with our application running in SAP, such as connectivity, destination service, application logging. There is also the information that we sometimes need in our application, such as the tenant information, for instance, in case of multi-tenancy, such as user information, like with which user I'm currently logged in my SAP Cloud Platform, and so on and so on. And applications running in SAP Cloud Platform, they usually not only connect to the external systems such as S/4HANA, but also they need to connect to those services and retrieve SAP Cloud Platform specific information. Especially if it is a standalone application, this is exactly what this application needs. And now just imagine you are a fresh Java developer who starts to get to know the Cloud Platform and wants to get information about those services in your application in Java. And for these cases, we provide special tools in SDK that help to simplify this communication with SAP Cloud Platform services. I will just highlight a few of them directly in the code here, just to give you a feeling how to communicate to those services via the SDK, but it's not the full set, of course. So first of all, I would like to highlight to you the class destination accessor, very useful class if you do not use, for instance, this virtual data model, which uses it behind the scene, but just want to send some direct queries to some URL. So you can also retrieve the destination like this, and then retrieve more deep dive information. So it's a more low-level way to access the destination. So for instance, you can retrieve the URL of the endpoint that is configured in this S/4HANA destination. You can retrieve the headers, authentication type, etc. Another useful feature that we often use in our application is user accessor class. So useful when you want to, for instance, to make some conditions in the code on a particular user that is logged in currently in the SAP Cloud Platform. So you can get the current user and then get corresponding authorizations, get name, and so on and so forth. So this is your SAP Cloud Platform user and easy access to those. We also have the tool that's providing the information about the tenant. So very useful for the case when we have multi-tenant application that potentially can serve several customers subscribing to them, to your application. Another useful feature is the HTTP client accessor. So here what you can do is again just provide the name of the destination in SAP Cloud Platform, and it provides you with the HTTP client, which you can just use to execute the query. For instance, it is useful when you, let's say, connect to some RESTful services. So recently we have also announced the support for systems such as Cloud for Real Estate, which not talk data, but rather talk REST. And so with the help of this accessor, so you can configure the destination to some systems that support in REST services and just create your own client accessor or HTTP client by this means and execute your own HTTP query, for instance, HTTP post or whatever request you prefer using this client accessor. It's also very useful. The next thing I would like to highlight here is that we support various SAP Cloud Platform environments. So those features that I have shown you, for instance, tenant, accessor, right? This is, of course, it has to be implemented differently depending on whether the application runs on Neo, on SAP Cloud Platform Neo or Cloud Foundry. And we support both editions here. So how do you handle this in the dependencies files? In your Maven dependency, you can specify the Cloud Platform dependency. So in this case, we specify Cloud Foundry dependency. So this tenant accessor will use in Cloud Foundry mechanism to access the tenant. So basically JSON Web Token to retrieve the tenant ID. I can also say I want to have Neo here, and again I can use the same client access tenant accessor here, but in this case behind the scene it will implement a different logic for you, and you just say without change any of the code you will access to tenant in Neo if your application runs on Neo, which is very convenient way. So you see, again, you don't need to change the code much. You rather just manipulate the configuration files to switch between platforms or to deploy the application in different platforms. Then it's important to highlight, and I had it in the slide before, you can use with SAP tools, so you can use the SDK with the SAP tools, such as Cloud Application Programming Model, but also in addition, you can use it with your framework of choice if you want to use, for instance, or build Spring Boot application or Java EE Pure application. So for those cases, we also provide you with so-called archetypes. So I'm here on the Maven Central, and you can see I have just looked up the archetypes that are available for the S/4HANA SDK. And there is a set of archetypes, so basically project templates that can be used to generate the project structure. So you have Cloud Foundry archetypes like Tommy, Tomcat, Spring, and you have several Neo archetypes as well. In addition, it's important to note that you are not forced to generate the project from scratch. You can just take one particular dependency that you need, for instance, this platform abstractions, and to pack it to your already existing app in order to use those classes like tenant accessor, user accessor, audit log, destination accessor, whatever you need to have access to. Then it's important to note that we do not only support these basic services in SAP Cloud Platform that I have shown. in a quick Java demo, but also we are going beyond and support also Leonardo, for instance, machine learning services and blockchain integration. I will not show the demo for this because it's rather the topic of a separate call, if the topic is interesting, but I would like to highlight this blog post that a colleague of ours has prepared that is showing how to integrate machine learning foundation using the SDK. In general, I would like to recommend you to take a look at the overview blog post that we had for the SDK. And if you want to find out all the tutorials also covering the machine learning and Leonardo and also blockchain and also other various services that we have, you can find the collection of those links here in the blog post. Another point that we suggest to use for any application on SAP Cloud Platform are cloud native best practices. And by this, we mean the topics like resilience for increasing availability of your applications and caching for caching and performance while accessing external systems. And you may have noticed that while I was doing the demo for Business Partner, I have extracted the logic of retrieving my business partner into a separate class, get all business partner command. And that was not because I wanted to have, not just because I wanted to have a cleaner code, but also because I have extended the SDK-based ERP command that helped me to easily introduce resilience to my application. So to build the fallback in case the service not available, for instance, when S/4HANA service not available, and also to cache the data, which is done by default when you extend this command and build the call here. So your data will be cached. You can also easily manipulate this cache, saying for how long it should be stored, this cache, how big the cache should be, and so on. So by this means we also provide the best practice of how to provide this resilience and how to introduce caching. So you don't need to learn this concept from scratch, but use this as a template, basically. Another thing that I would like to highlight, we also have support for testing in the SDK. So I have also example of the test here in my application. And let's just give it a quick look. Let's take a quick look at this. So let's say here business partner servlet test. One important component of the testing framework is the mock util that we provide as part of the SDK. And the mock util helps you to mock various SAP Cloud Platform services. So for instance, here when you say mock default, we mock, for instance, tenants, we mock users. Of course, when you just run the test locally on your machine, you don't have the tenant service as in SAP Cloud Platform. You need to mock the user. Also, destination service is not available, so you need to mock it. And all those services are just automatically mocked by means of this mock util, so you can run your tests, your integration tests, as they would run in SAP Cloud Platform, but locally, without having platform in place. So that simplifies the test development a lot. Another point is the continuous delivery out of the box. So again, this tool can be used for any cloud native application, not only for S/4HANA connectivity. And here I would like to elaborate quickly. So we had the session dedicated to the continuous delivery toolkit in our series for partners. And if you have access to Partner Edge Build portal, you can look it up. So we have this tool, Pipeline as Code. So on the one hand side, we provide the pre-configured pipeline, which contains various steps of the life cycle of the application, such as build, test, control quality, and deploy in SAP Cloud Platform, but also to provide the infrastructure where this pipeline runs, we set up the continuous delivery infrastructure in Docker containers that you can easily set up on your premise, on Linux server, or on cloud, for instance, on Kubernetes. And then after you set it up, you can easily use the pipeline as is. Just usually take a few minutes or hour to set up. So in the project, for instance, here in my project, I have generated this project using the SDK Archetype. I have some artifacts that are related to the pipeline. So first of all, I have this CX server folder that you get, and this CX server file that helps to set up the infrastructure. So all you need to do is just to copy this file into the Linux server where you want to set up the infrastructure, or into your Kubernetes cluster and run it. And this setups Docker containers that we provide in Docker Hub, and this infrastructure is then ready to host the pipeline that we provide. The pipeline, or the tools for the pipeline itself, can be also found in the project structure. So there is a Jenkins file that helps you to pull the pre-configured pipeline from GitHub. So on a side note, this pipeline is an open source tool. You can take a look at the artifacts directly on GitHub. And there is a configuration file, which means you can also enter some particular configurations for the steps of the pipeline, like integration tests, for instance, with which credentials you want to test, with production deployment, to which account you want to deploy, etc. At the end, I just show you the final view, what you get. So we are working with Jenkins. So the Jenkins continuous integration, continuous delivery toolset will be installed as soon as you install those Docker containers, and also pre-configured. So all the necessary plugins will be also pre-configured and installed. And this is my demo instance of the Jenkins file of the Jenkins. So I do already have several projects here in place, but when you just set it up, it will be empty. And then when you just create a new item and connect it to your source repository, for instance, to your GitHub, it will create such a project here and start building it automatically. The configuration file that I have just shown, it should be also stored in the same GitHub repository. And by this means, the tool identifies which stages should be executed in the pipeline. So for instance, in this case, I have pre-configured some stages. And this is the pipeline this is how it looks like for me. So the build phase, of course, configured. There are tests that are executed, like integration tests. Quality checks are executed, for instance, checking the code coverage and so. And the production deployment is also done. So there are some phases that are not configured in this case, but this is not a productive application that I have used here. In the productive case, you can also easily configure those steps in the pipeline config in your project, and this will be also automatically then executed. So if there is any error in the pipeline, of course, production deployment will not happen. So this is the lifecycle management tool that we offer for both Java and JavaScript, and that can be used independently on whether you connect to S/4HANA or not. Since the latest versions, as I have mentioned, we also support access to other APIs, like OData APIs. And for this, we have the generator of service of Java client. And for instance, if you take a look at the this address manager application that I have shown, we can see here on the lower on this screen, this data is actually coming from SuccessFactors. So this is time account balance for this particular business partner. And I can also quickly demonstrate that the source code used for accessing this data, looks very similar to the one that we used for S/4HANA connectivity. So this query that we see here, it's written again with the SDK, with this default time account service, with this, which is also this visual data model. But in this case, it goes to a success factor destination. Yeah, but again, for me, all the operations are available here that I have done for S/4HANA. In the same manner, we can also connect to other systems talking or data. So not only S/4HANA. The only point is here that for now, you need to do some manual steps to generate this visual data model. So basically, you need to use the visual data model generator to generate those classes for other system other than S4. But then final code will look very similar to the one we have seen for S4. We are coming to the end of the hour, so I would like to highlight some resources, some tools that you can take a look at offline after the call to learn more about the topics that I have introduced. So first of all, we will have this community call on a monthly basis, and there is a blog post describing this call. So starting from the next session, other colleagues of mine will take over here, and also other speakers will introduce various topics. So please follow this blog post and also SAP community list on the topics to come. Really excited to talk about integrations with various other tools SAP provides in the series. And then, of course, take a look at those tutorials, book an Open SAP course if you would like to investigate the SAP Cloud SDK topic in particular in more details. So all those materials are available online, like tutorials, and Open SAP course is also free, and book can be easily purchased then in SAP Press website or Amazon. With that, I think we have a couple of minutes for questions, if there are any. First of all, thanks for your attention.
Thanks, Katja, for the presentation. It was very informational. As you said, we have Q&A open now, and if anybody would like to speak, you can also raise your hands, and you'll be unmuted. Well, looks like we do not have any questions, but as you said, you're part of the community. You can be reached. So if anybody has any questions after that, of course, you and your team can be reached.
Sure. Also, feel free to reach out to us with regard to the topics that you are interested in the next update calls. So we'll definitely take them into account while planning the next sessions. As I have mentioned, we are still in process of planning of them upcoming topics. So very interested to hear your opinions here.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you everybody for attending. Thank you again, Katja, for the presentation. This was great. This recording will be posted into our channels, and the materials will be shared. So thanks again for attending, and thank you, Katja, and have a great day.
Thanks, Lucia. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.